Hello lovely people and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do Dawn Michelle's lovely tag over at Boho Tarot. She's got this brilliant tag out at the minute, which is Pair My Reads, I think it's called, where you pair your decks with the books that you love or are reading, and I absolutely love this idea for a tag. So I've gone through my bookcases. Now a lot of my books I've actually decluttered since the beginning of the year, but I've kept some of my favourites. I've also got some library books on the go as well, so I thought today I would share favourite books and current books that I'm reading alongside the decks that I think embody the essence of those favourite or current reads. So it's a wonderful tag. Thank you, Dawn Michelle, and I'm really excited to join in. And I'm going to start with what is probably quite an obvious start. So what I've got here is one of my all-time favourite series of books. It's a 4-book series initially. Maggie Steifvater has written some spin-off books following one of the main characters. Of course, this is the Raven Boys book. It's a really obvious start to this tag because, of course, there is the deck that goes with this series of books, which, of course, is this one, the Raven's Prophecy Tarot. Now, I love young adult, I love kids books, I also love adult, I love all books, let's just face it, but this book is right up my alley, this series. It's sort of young adult fantasy. I love fantasy fiction and it is spectacular. The premise of the series is set around a young girl called Blue who meets a group of friends from a local school. She is from a very magical family, a family with a single mom and aunts all in the same house. They are witchy, scrying, tarot reading women that she's grown up with, and over her head has always been the prophecy of the person, her first true love. If she kisses them, they will die. So it starts off with this prophecy, and it says even if Blue hadn't been told her true love would die if she kissed him, she would stay away from boys, especially the ones from the local private school known as Raven Boys. They only mean trouble. But this is the year that everything will change for Blue. This is the year that she will be drawn into the strange and sinister world of the Raven Boys, and the year Blue will discover that magic does exist. This is the year she will fall in love. And it's a magical fantasy ride with this young group of people. So the Raven's Prophecy Tarot, of course, is a perfect pairing with this series of books. But also I wanted to put this oracle with it, one of the Cheryl Yambrach Rose oracles, because as you can see, you've got Excalibur on the front of here, you've got the Isle of Avalon, and the Raven Boys series also not only explores the ley lines, which always makes me think of Glastonbury and the meeting of ley lines, but it also follows a search for a legendary king and King Arthur and all of that sort of area of story. So these two, I think, make a brilliant pairing to sum up the very essence of the Raven Boys. It was freezing in the churchyard even before the dead arrived. Every year, Blue and her mother Moira had come to the same place, and every year it was chilly. But this year, without Moira here with her, it felt colder. It was April the 24th, St. Mark's Eve. For most people, St. Mark's Day came and went without note. It wasn't a school holiday, no presents were exchanged, there were no costumes or festivals. There was no St. Mark's Day sales, no St. Mark's Day cards in the shops, no special television programmes that aired only once a year, No one marked April the 25th on their calendar. In fact, most of the living were unaware that St. Mark even had a day named in his honour. But the dead remembered. As Blue sat shivering on the stone wall, she reasoned that at the very least, it wasn't raining this year. The next book is one that I actually can't find, and it's one of my top 5 books, probably even my top 2, and that's The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Now, I don't have the book here, so I'll put a picture in, but I do have these 2 decks, which I think really sum up the essence of the night circus. So it's a magical circus that appears in the night. The visuals that this book creates as you read are like nothing else. It's such a picture making experience to read. It's a love story between magical people, and it's just such a fantastic read. It's like somebody got a kid's book and just manufactured it into an adult read. It's another fantasy book, and it's brilliant. And I think these 2 decks, so we've got the Pholarchos Tarot here by Carmen Sorrenti, and we've got the original version of the Divine Circus Oracle by Alana Fairchild. So these 2 decks, I think, as you can see straight away, kind of embody that sort of magical, mystical circus with these amazing characters involved. The circus arrives without warning. No announcements precede it. No paper notices on downtown posts and billboards. No mention on advertisements in local newspapers. It is simply there when yesterday it was not. The towering tents are striped in white and black. No golds and crimson to be seen. No colour at all, save for the neighbouring trees and the grass of the surrounding fields. Black and white stripes on grey sky. Countless tents of varying shapes and sizes, with an elaborate wrought iron fence encasing them in a colourless world. Even what little grass is visible from outside is black or white, painted or powdered, or treated with some other circus trick. And another book by Erin Morgenstern, which I absolutely love, is her second book, The Starless Sea. This book again was another incredible read, set in a world where books and story make this underworld, and it says, "Are you lost or are you exploring?" When Zachary Rawlings stumbles across a strange book hidden in his university library, it leads him on a quest unlike any other. Its pages entrance him with their tales of love-lorn prisoners, lost cities and nameless acolytes. But they also contain something impossible, a recollection from his own childhood. Determined to solve the puzzle of the book, Zachary follows the clues he finds on the cover: a bee, a key, and a sword. They guide him to a masquerade ball, to a dangerous secret club, and finally through a magical doorway created by the fierce and mysterious Mirabelle. This door leads to a subterranean labyrinth filled with stories hidden far beneath the surface of the earth. So it's just a fantastical read where story is inherently a part of its makeup. And for me, it had to be the Chrysalis Tarot. When I think of sort of storytelling, the Chrysalis Tarot makes me think of story and fantastical worlds. And I'm going to pair it with the Whispers of Healing Oracle cards as well, because again, I think this is full of that sort of idea of fantastical worlds too. So as you can see, we start off here with a card that is actually called The Storyteller. So in the Oracle here, again, we've got sort of fantastical worlds that look like they belong in story, but you've also got horizontal cards as well. So there's a lot of horizontal cards in this deck, as you can see. Far beneath the surface of the earth, hidden from the sun and the moon, upon the shores of the starless sea, there is a labyrinthine collection of tunnels and rooms filled with stories. Stories written in books and sealed in jars and painted on walls. Odes inscribed onto skin and pressed into rose petals. Tales laid in tiles upon the floor. Bits of plot worn away by passing feet. Legends carved in crystal and hung from chandeliers. Stories catalogued and cared for and revered. Old stories preserved, while new stories spring up around them. The place is sprawling yet intimate. It is difficult to measure its breadth. Halls fold into rooms or galleries, and stairs twist downward or upward to alcoves or arcades. Everywhere there are doors leading to new spaces and new stories and new secrets to be discovered, and everywhere there are books. It is a sanctuary for storytellers and story keepers and story lovers. They eat and sleep and dream, surrounded by chronicles and histories and myths. Now, probably one of my all-time favourite, in fact, yeah, it is my favourite series of books I've ever read, is a series by Merissa Meyer called The Lunar Chronicles. And this is a retelling of fairy tales. It is spectacular. You can see there's a robot workings inside this foot, because it's kind of set in a world where there are part androids, full-on androids. There's a moon world with an evil moon queen that can mind control, and it is just fantastic. So there's 4 books. You can see some of them are monster books. There's also a backstory behind the evil moon queen, and there's a book about short stories that run around this series of books. All are fantastic. My middle daughter Poppy has just finished reading this series and she loved it too. In fact, part of her birthday book haul, I bought her some new fiction by Merissa Meyer, and she's as much in love with the new books that she's reading as she was with these. So it's very evil moon queen fairy tale, and the sort of travel between planets, so it's kind of sort of sci-fi world travelling as well. So I thought about my decks, and there were a few actually that I thought might work well. Of course, the Deviant moon with these strange moon creatures, the cosmic reading cards, because there is within it that kind of element of travelling to and from the moon. And in here I've got the Star Tarot as well, because it's also full of the most amazing, beautiful characters. There are lots of love stories wound in between. There's a lot of beauty in the books, as well as the group of friends try and battle the evil moon queen. So I thought, just thought about these 3 decks combined, it kind of really sums up the essence of the book. Maybe he was leading her to her death. Maybe Wolf was marching towards his. She tilted her chin up, refusing to frighten herself with her own morose thoughts. All that mattered now was rescuing her grandmother, and she was so close, so close. The ancient residences drew in closer to the road as they left the busy intersection behind. There was only the occasional sign of life, a cat cleaning itself in the window of a hat shop, a man in a suit darting from a hotel into a waiting hover. They passed a net screen that showed a commercial for a shampoo that claimed to change the colour of one's hair based on their moods. She already yearned for the solitude of the farm. That was the only reality she knew, the farm and her grandmother and her weekly deliveries. And now Wolf, that was the reality she wanted. Wolf quickened his pace, but his shoulders were squeezing inward again. Locking her jaw, Scarlet reached forward and grasped his wrist. "I can't let you do this," she said, angrier than she'd intended. "Just tell me where it is and I'll go on by myself. Just tell me what to do. Give me some indication of what I'm dealing with and I'll figure something out, but I can't let you go with me." He stared down at her for a long moment, and she tried to see softness in his stark green eyes, but the warmth and desperation that had been so apparent on the train were now replaced with cold resolve. He pried his arm away. "Do you see that man sitting in front of the closed cafe on the other side of the street?" She slid her attention off him and found the man sitting at one of the outdoor tables. One ankle was propped on his knee, his elbow dangling off the back of his chair. He was staring at them and he didn't try to hide it. When Scarlet caught his eye, he winked. A chill crawled over her skin. "Pack member," said Wolf. "We passed another at the Magrail station 2 blocks back, and," he craned his head, "if the stench is any indication, we're about to cross paths with another when we turn this next corner." Her heart was suddenly stomping. How did they know we were here? "I suspect they've been waiting for us. They've probably been tracking your ID." The next series of books I want to talk about are these. I've currently read these two, which are the first 2 books. There's another 2 books to come, and they're the books by Catherine M. Valente about a girl called September who finds herself on varying adventures in Fairyland. Now, it is child's fiction, but it reads like a dream if you're an adult as well. It's brilliantly written. It feels like the child's version of In the Night Circus, but like I said, it reads brilliantly as an adult as well. It's full of fantastical creatures, it's full of strange worlds, it's full of mythic creatures and familiars walking on the adventure with September, and it is brilliant. And the 2 decks that I thought might be perfect to embody the energy of this book is, of course, The Dreams of Gaia, and the deck that I've got in here, which is the Brian Froud Fairy Oracle. I just thought that these would be absolutely perfect. Once upon a time, a girl named September grew very tired indeed of her parents' house, where she washed the same pink and yellow teacups and matching gravy boats every day, slept on the same embroidered pillow, and played with the same small and amiable dog. Because she had been born in May, and because she had a mole on her left cheek, and because her feet were very large and ungainly, the green wind took pity on her and flew to her window one evening just after her 12th birthday. He was dressed in a green smoking jacket and a green carriage driver's cloak and green jodhpurs and green snowshoes. It is very cold above the clouds in the shanty towns where the 6 winds live. "You seem an ill-tempered and irascible enough child," said the green wind. "How would you like to come away with me and ride upon the leopard of little breezes and be delivered to the great sea which borders Fairyland? I am afraid I cannot go in, as harsh airs are not allowed, but I should be happy to deposit you upon the perverse and perilous sea." "Oh, yes," breathed September, who disapproved deeply of pink and yellow teacups and also of small amiable dogs. "Well then, come and sit by me, and do not pull too harshly on my leopard's fur, as she bites." So from the Fairyland series that I am still reading to another series that I'm still reading. Now this is a Patternist novel from the series by Octavia E. Butler, and it's called Wild Seed, and it's all about an ancient god who is immortal, and an immortal that meets another immortal. So in this you've got an element of guardianship over humans and over the world, and immortals shaping the world, but there is in this first book a slightly sinister overtone. We're not quite sure whether the humans that come into contact with this immortal are prisoners who are being manipulated, and how much danger exactly are they in, which is heightened when the second immortal escapes. So for guardians and overseers of otherworldly qualities with a slightly sinister vibe, I thought the Guardian Tarot by Beth Nen would be absolutely brilliant, and I wanted to pair it with the Sacred Earth Oracle as well. Again, it kind of feels like a guardianship of the earth with fantastic creatures within it. Enianwu's ears and eyes were far sharper than those of other people. She had increased their sensitivity deliberately after the first time men came stalking her, their machetes ready, their intentions clear. She had to kill 7 times on that terrible day, 7 frightened men who could have been spared, and she had nearly died herself, all because she let people come upon her unnoticed. Never again. Now, for instance, she was very much aware of the lone intruder who prowled the bush near her. He kept himself hidden, moved towards her like smoke, but she heard him, followed him with her ears. Giving no outward sign, she went on tending her garden. As long as she knew where the intruder was, she had no fear of him. Perhaps he would lose his courage and go away. Meanwhile, there were weeds among the cocoa yams and her herbs. When he was near enough, he spoke to her, and his words made her frown in confusion. They were foreign words, completely incomprehensible to her, but there was a strange familiarity to them, as though she should have understood. She stood up, concealing uncharacteristic nervousness. "Who are you?" she asked. And another book, which is probably my all-time favourite book, is this one by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. It's the classic Women Who Run with the Wolves. Now this is just written all over because this one blew my mind. This is a book where she takes myth and story and fairy tale, all the stories that we know so well. She breaks it down so that every character that appears within the story and the elements of the story become parts of our own psyche. So we embody in certain ways all the characters within the story. So story becomes a blueprint to understand ourselves better with. It's like a creative compartmentalization of our own psyche and our ego. And I read this and I thought, I will never ever read story the same ever again. It blew my mind. I love it. I want to reread it. But as it says on the cover, it's all about contacting the power of the wild woman. And for me, the deck that immediately sprung to mind for that energy was the one in here, which is the Tarot of the Crone. The deck that I own is about the power of the wild woman. It's this one. But I wanted to try pairing it with the Creativity Oracle as well, because the Creativity Oracle for me is about finding inspiration and the muse in all sorts of places, and that's what this book did for me. It developed into a series of artworks, and as I read the words just images appeared from the artwork in my mind. And for me, the spirit of a wild woman is about contacting your creative side and giving yourself permission to create, however that might be, whether it be art or embroidery as in this one, and quilting, or whether it be with words or with storytelling or with photography or with cooking, or the creativity that you bring into your mothering and your motherhood and your home. There's creativity in all that we do, and I think part of creativity is giving yourself permission. So I thought these two decks really could embody the essence of the women who run with the wolves. Whatever dilemma a woman finds herself in, the voices of the older sisters in her psyche continue to urge her to consciousness and to be wise in her choices. They represent those voices in the back of the mind that whisper the truths that a woman may wish to avoid, for they end her fantasy of paradise found. So the fateful marriage occurs, the mingling of the sweetly naive and the dastardly unlit. When Bluebeard leaves on his journey, the young woman does not realise that even though she is exhorted to do anything she wishes except that one thing, she is living less rather than living more. Many women have literally lived the Bluebeard tale. They marry while they are yet naive about predators, and they choose someone who is destructive to their lives. They are determined to cure the person with love. They are in some way playing house. One could say they have spent much time saying, his beard isn't really so blue. As long as a woman is forced into believing she is powerless and or is trained to not consciously register what she knows to be true, the feminine impulses and gifts of her psyche continue to be killed off. The deceitful promise of the predator is that the woman will become a queen in some way, when in fact her murder is being planned. There is a way out of all this, but one must have a key. Okay, I wanted to share now the book that I'm currently reading. It's a library book, and it is this one. It's called The Way Through the Woods by Longlit Woon, of mushrooms and mourning. And this is a story of a woman whose husband dropped down dead at work unexpectedly one day, and her journey to do the walk through the dark woods, her journey with mourning, her journey of healing, and she does it by joining a mushroom hunting society. So it's a book about mushrooms and the inner circle of mushroom hunting, and her journeys out to secret places to find mushrooms, and how that linked with her healing journey. And I'm finding it absolutely beautiful. And the decks that I thought could embody that sort of journey to the dark secret places where mushrooms might be growing, and that sort of natural world, are these two, the Hush Tarot and the Earthbound Oracle. So I wanted to see what these two would be like next to each other, and yeah, for me they really do scream the energy of the way through the woods. This is the story of a journey which started on the day when my life was turned upside down. The day when Eolf went to work and didn't come home. He never came back. Life as I had known it was gone in that instant. The world would never be the same again. I was devastated. The pain of my loss was all that was left of him. It tore me apart. But I had no wish to dull the agony with painkillers. I wanted to suffer every ounce of the torment raw. It was confirmation that he had lived, that he had been my husband. I did not want that to be gone as well. I was in free fall. I, who had always been in command and in control. I, who liked to have a firm grip on things. My lodestar was gone. I found myself in unknown territory, a reluctant wanderer in a strange land. Visibility was poor, and I had neither map nor compass. Which way was up? Which way was down? From which corner should I start walking? Where should I set my foot? There was nothing but blackness. But to my surprise, I chanced upon the answers to these questions where I least expected them. The next one is a book that can still rip my heart out, really, and it's this one, The Rabbit's Wedding by Garth Williams. Now, this was given to me by a teacher that used to sometimes come in and work in the school where I was a full-time teacher. And she gave it to me as a wedding present. Now, she'd come into the class one day and she had this book with her. It was her book of old, and she gave it to me on my wedding day, because when she read it to me, it's called The Rabbit's Wedding. Well, she didn't read it to me, she read it to the class. I loved this story so much, and it's a story about feeling like you found just your other half totally, the white rabbit and the black rabbit, two very different characters coming together and falling in love, and the joy of a wedding and never being sad again. And when she gave it to me, I cried because I loved it so much. I cried when I heard it read, and I cried when she gave it to me. And she said, although it was precious to her, she just knew that I loved it so much. She gave it to me. And it is incredibly precious to me, even though my own wedding and marriage ended up being anything but you'll never be sad again. So I liked that idea of the black against the white. So and of course it's rabbits, and I went for this animal deck. So this is the White Sage Tarot, which has got a lot of that white space, and it's got animals. But then this Reclaim Oracle, which balances the white up with the black, is very much a deck that I've used to reclaim myself after surviving my marriage. And it's used to heal. This is like an emotion wheel in a deck. So I just thought these two, with the clear, unhassled, beautiful energy, the calm energy of this deck, with the darker recovery energy of this deck, for me really embody the love I've got for the book The Rabbit's Wedding, but also the deep, soul-crushing, tragic sadness that is still within me when I look at the book too. What's the matter? Asked the little white rabbit. I'm just thinking, replied the little black rabbit. What are you always thinking about? Asked the little white rabbit. I'm just thinking about my wish, replied the little black rabbit. What is your wish? Asked the little white rabbit. I just wish that I could be with you forever and always, replied the little black rabbit. The little white rabbit opened her eyes very wide and thought very hard. Why don't you wish a little harder? Asked the little white rabbit. The little black rabbit opened his eyes very wide and thought very hard. I wish you were all mine, said the little black rabbit. Do you really wish that? Asked the little white rabbit. I really do, replied the little black rabbit. Then I will be yours, said the little white rabbit. Forever and always? Asked the little black rabbit. Forever and always, replied the little white rabbit. The little white rabbit gave the little black rabbit her soft white paw. Then they picked dandelions and put them in their ears. All the other rabbits came out to see how happy they both were, and they danced in a wedding circle around the little black rabbit and the little white rabbit. The other animals of the forest came to watch the wedding dance, and they too danced all night in the moonlight. And so the two little rabbits were wed and lived together happily in the big forest, eating dandelions, playing jump the daisies, run through the clover and find the acorn all day long. And the little black rabbit never looked sad again. And finally, I thought I would end with one of my all-time favourite authors, and that's Tove Jansson. And now Tove Jansson is the writer of The Moomins, and which are brilliant. I love the Moomins books, and I'm trying to collect this reprinting of them in this beautiful hardbound version. They are gentle books written by a really creative mind, but what I think a lot of people don't realise is Tove Jansson also wrote short stories for adults. She didn't write many, unfortunately. She wrote this one, a winter book. She also wrote the summer book. I have the summer book as well. And if you like writing that is like pure magic and poetry on every line, where every sentence makes you clutch your heart with joy at its beauty, then these short story adult books are for you. Now, Tove Jansson, she grew up in a small island, a Scandinavian island, and it was a really creative life. Her father was a sculptor. I think her mother was an artist too. Gosh, I'm gonna have to reread this, I've forgotten. But there was creativity all around her, and she had this amazing life on this island where she lived with her mom and her dad and her grandma, a tiny, almost uninhabited island. So for me, whenever I think of Tove Jansson's work, I think about sort of secluded places to live. There's often there's woods, and there's places to explore, and there's shorelines, and there's the ocean, and it's all about the magic of setting that would foster somebody to become this brilliant, eccentric, creative being that I think Tove was, and all of her family were. So I've tried to think of that sort of feeling of eccentricity and creativity and the ocean, and I think for me it's these two decks that sum up that energy. So we have Dame Darcy's Mermaid Tarot, and also Monica L. Knightman's The Stolen Child Tarot, which I have had wanted for such a long time, and I was really kindly gifted it, but I haven't worked with this one yet. All I've done is I've flipped through, I've pulled the odd card here or there, but I think both decks for me just sum up that sort of oceanic, eccentric world that Tove's writing makes me think of. When we got to the strange house, it began to snow in quite a different way. A mass of tired old clouds opened and flung snow at us, all of a sudden and just anyhow. They weren't ordinary snowflakes. They fell straight down in large sticky lumps. They clung to each other and sank quickly, and they weren't white, but grey. The whole world was as heavy as lead. Mummy carried in the suitcases and stamped her feet on the doormat and talked the whole time, because she thought the whole thing was such fun and that everything was different. But I said nothing, because I didn't like this strange house. I stood in the window and watched the snow falling, and it was all wrong. It wasn't the same as in town. There it blows black and white over the roof, or falls gently as if from heaven and forms beautiful arches over the sitting room window. The landscape looked dangerous too. It was bare and open and swallowed up the snow, and the trees stood in black rows that ended in nothing. At the edge of the world there was a narrow fringe of forest. Everything was wrong. So that's it, guys. A pairing of books I love with the decks I love as well. And I find it a really lovely way to find energetic pairings. Some of these pairings, as I've shared them, I've just thought, oh wow, that looks amazing. So I'm going to be coming back to some of these pairings. I don't think any of these pairings that I shared were actually pairings that I have already worked with. So they were all kind of new. So thank you, Dawn Michelle, for this fantastic tag. Look, I've got so much out, I can't fit it all in. And thank you everybody for watching too, and I will see you next time. Bye.